I begged my mother to take me to the fair. Now I wish I hadn't. "Aw, come on, Mom. I want to see the living tattoo," I wailed. "No, I won't have a child of mine subjected to such filth." "It's not filth, it's cool." Defacing yourself like some bathroom wall is just disgraceful and disgusting. "Oh, Mom." "No, and that's the last I'll hear of it." With that, she dragged me away from the entrance to the freak show. We spent the rest of the day playing games and riding rides. The smell of cotton candy and pizza filled the air. The bells, whistles, and screams of joy from children having the times of their lives. Any other kid would be overjoyed with all the things we did, but not me. I couldn't get the vision out of my head. The living tattoo. Wherever I went and whatever I did, the sign danced in front of my eyes. It taunted me like a carrot, dangling just out of a donkey's reach. I begged and pleaded all day, but Mom would hear none of it. I dragged my feet and screamed like I was being killed whenever we went near the freak's tent. She just dragged me silently, ignoring the stares of people passing by. Instead of remembering a wonderful day at the fair, we were both miserable as she drove us home. "But the fair will be gone in 2 days," I wailed as we pulled into our driveway. "All I wanted to see was the living tattoo." "You're the worst mother ever." "That's it," she said while opening the front door. "I've had enough. Go straight to your room, and I don't want to see you again until your attitude improves." "If it does, will we go to the fair tomorrow?" She pulled at her hair and screamed as she stormed off to the kitchen and slammed the door. "Is that a yes?" The door didn't answer. I stomped up the stairs as loud as I could and kicked my bedroom door shut. "Bitch!" I threw myself on the bed and crossed my arms. I never get anything I want. I lay there, refusing to move or even turn my light on. My TV, stereo, stack of video games all held no interest to me. All I could think about was the one thing I couldn't have. Through the window, I could see a glow on the horizon as night fell and the lights from the fair lit the sky. Tomorrow's the last day. I'll have to wait a whole year. From somewhere inside my mind that never spoke, I heard, Unless what? Unless you sneak out and go by yourself. Should I do that?" "She said she didn't want to see you again until your attitude changed." "Will going to the fair change your attitude?" "Yes." "Then there you go. You're just doing what Mommy told you to do." A smile crept across my face as I slid out through my window. I snuck in through a hole in the fence and came face to face with a carny. "What you think you doing here, boy?" he said through his 3 visible teeth. "Nothing," I said and started walking away. "Wait a minute. I know you." My blood ran cold. "Yeah, you're that brat that was whining at your mom today." "I'm not a brat." "Excuse me, Your Highness." I turned to leave. "I can get you in to see him." I stopped. "Who?" "The living tattoo." I froze in place and slowly turned. "You can do that?" "Follow me." He led me down a path that ran right behind the tents. It was a different world back there. Squalor was the norm. Ragged people were laying on lawn chairs if they were lucky. More often than not, they just lay on the ground. Tin cans with rotted food, empty bags of popcorn, and discarded tubes for cotton candy were strewn everywhere. Entire armies of ants crawled over everything and everybody. He led me up to a large dark tent with a cigar store Indian sitting outside of it, then stopped. "There's only one question I need to ask you first. How much do you want to go inside?" "What do you mean?" "How desperate are you to see? What would you give to go inside this tent?" "Anything." He smiled his 3 crooked teeth. "That's the right answer." He pulled back the flap and disappeared inside. I followed and was immediately overwhelmed by darkness. A musty smell hung heavy in the air. I thrust my hands out in front of me, feeling my way as I drowned in the pitch black. Just as suddenly as the light had left, it reappeared. Torches lit the way to the center of the room. My eyes toured the inside of the tent. Strange shadow creatures hovered at the edge of the light. The flames danced hungrily in their eyes. Panic washed over me, and I turned to leave. "What's this?" the carny said, blocking my exit. "You ain't leaving without seeing him. Not after all that fuss you put up about it." "I'm not sure my mom would like me to be here alone." "No, of course she wouldn't. That's the whole point, isn't it? You wanted to show her who's boss." His crooked smile was tinged with something else I couldn't place. "Come on then, up you go." He gave me a little push towards the raised platform in the middle of the room, where a large figure sat motionless, totally covered by a black cloak. The carny guided me around to the front, where I could see him. The intricate pictures that covered every inch of his face were mesmerizing. A one-eyed pirate being impaled by a sword, a beautiful scantily clad woman, a strange symbol I had never seen before. They all drew me closer. I found myself a hand's breadth away from him. His eyes were pitch black, yet did not reflect the light of the torches. "Well, there you go," the carny said. "You wanted to see him, and there he is." For the first time, his eyes blinked. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I lurched back, but the carny caught me and held me fast. "He's heard all about you, of course. You and that little show you put on today. He's wanted to meet you ever since." Why?" I stammered. "He's never met someone so selfish, so unconcerned about anyone else. He wanted to know how you do it." "Do what?" "Ignore every feeling of right and wrong inside you. Ignore the woman who gave you life. Ignore the common sense that God gave even a rat, just so you could have your own way." I glanced back at the carny with contempt. When I looked again, the pirate wasn't staring at the woman anymore. He was staring at me. "They wanted to see you too." The living tattoo untied a knot at his neck, and the cloak fell away. Nothing covered his body except for tattoos and a pair of briefs. Artistic masterpieces overflowed from one to the other. Textures so deep, it seemed like no artist could possibly achieve. And they were all looking at me. Each mythological creature, human, alien, even the symbols, seemed to somehow stare. My blood ran cold, and I began to shiver. He stood, stepped forward, and wrapped his cloak around me. Suddenly the shivering stopped. I felt warm again. I felt exhilarated. He reached out and took my hand, then pulled me close and whispered with a voice that sounded like 1,000 together. "Release me." I tried to let go of his hand, but he still held me in an iron grip. My mouth refused to open. My mind was a whirlwind. I couldn't think. As we stood face to face, hands still clasped, one of his tattoos moved. A tiny horse and chariot, carrying a Roman soldier, galloping down to the edge of his finger, and disappeared. My jaw dropped open, but no words came out. My mind reeled when the horse and chariot suddenly appeared on my hand. I watched in shock as they rode up my arm and disappeared beneath my sleeve. The floodgates opened and all the other tattoos followed suit. A sea of green flowed up my arm, disappearing under my clothes until there was no more room and they flooded onto my face. While I watched my body be invaded by living pictures, I didn't notice my counterpart still held my hand. He had shrunk several inches while I had grown. His eyes were no longer inky pools of soulless black. They were green, the same as mine. In fact, his face was the same one I saw in the mirror each morning. His skin was milky white, just like mine used to be. Not a mark or blemish remained. My doppelganger and the carny took my clothes and put them on him, then wrapped me in the cloak. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was dragged down into the chair, unable to move. My new tattoos laughed and carried on, as though the clock had just struck 12 on December 31st. They mocked me and jeered at me as Johnny walked back through the torches and out of the tent. Sleep eluded me that night. The figures on my skin moved all night. It was like a colony of ants, consistently crawling over every inch of my body. I tried scratching once. The pirate I had scratched over reared back and stabbed me with his sword. Unbelievable pain shot through my face. The rest of the night, I just did my best not to go insane from the itching, but I never scratched again. The next day held a fresh hell. Sleep was a luxury that had eluded me. My torment was to live the nightmare of each tattoo. I was held down by the weight of my inky damnation, unable to move or even speak. Unfortunately, I could still see the children who passed through, wearing looks of shock and admiration. I could also feel the scorn of the mothers who hid their child's eyes and quickly moved on at the sight of me. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, in walked little Johnny, with my mom holding his hand. She looked at me with the same scorn I had seen on the other mothers' faces. Honestly, I don't know why you wanted to see this so badly. You'll have nightmares for weeks. Don't worry, Mom. I think I'll sleep better than I ever have in a long time, he told her in my voice. She herded him away, repulsed by the sight of me. You just better not have any ideas of getting a tattoo of your own. He glanced back at me. I wouldn't dream of it. I bowed my head as he walked out with my mother, never to return. A tear formed in my black eyes when I noticed a new tattoo on my arm. It was a small boy with green eyes. A day at the carnival. I moved to the town of Edgewood Lake a few days ago. I was lucky to find a boyfriend, Alan, so fast. It was a quiet town where nearly everyone knew each other. If you live in a small town, you'd know. Alan suggested we go to the town carnival. I'm not sure what the difference is between a carnival and a fair, but whatever it is, It was quite small. There was a Ferris wheel, though, and it would make a great romantic view. We ended up parking further from the carnival than we would have liked. The whole town was there, and despite being a small population, there were still hundreds of cars lining the narrow roads. The sound of screams became audible. There were ones of joy and excitement. The music came next, and over the tree line, I could see the Ferris wheel slowly turning. I squeezed Ellen's arm. It was going to be fun. The whole place was bustling. The smell of popcorn and something fried was thick in the air. I followed its scent to a small stand with chip on a stick plastered across the top. Alan and I shared some cotton candy. He won me a small blue penguin plushie at a ring toss, and we joked about whether we should go in the funhouse with the small children. We'd never fit, of course. Finally, it came to the big events. Alan and I looked between the roller coaster and the Ferris wheel. I was a huge scaredy cat and always loved the Ferris wheel, so I pulled Alan to the short line. When I was younger, I had only been on the Ferris wheel once. The line was always so long, it wasn't really worth waiting. We moved closer and closer, and finally the ride operator gestured for us to climb the stairs and get in. The carriage rocked slightly, and I grinned in mild shock. There was only room for us to sit opposite each other, but that was fine. We moved up as 3 more carriages were filled, and in our closed compartment, I could smell something smoky. I looked down and saw a few cigarette butts by our feet. Figures. The wheel groaned to life. As we climbed higher, I stared out the window. You could see the forest from here, across the parking lot. The sounds below slipped away. Did you know this carnival was really popular once upon a time? Alan said. It was going to put the town on the map. I looked over the grounds. I can see why. What happened? Did someone die? Yeah, Alan said. The burnt smell got stronger. Everyone, he said with a touch of sadness. My head snapped back to him, but he was gone. I looked out the window and saw that the carnival was little more than a burnt husk. The spokes of the Ferris wheel were blackened and rusty. I screamed, but there was no one around to hear. What is your favorite carnival ride? The merry-go-round, the roundabout, the carousel. So many names for one basic concept. Sit on a pretty painted horse and go round to music. The wind swooping past, faster and faster. Barely able to see the people's faces rushing past. I almost felt like I was going through time, the first and only time I was ever on a carousel. I remember tugging on his hand as soon as I saw it. I saw the lights, the horses beautifully painted on the golden poles, and I heard the music. God, I loved that music. So light and cheerful, it made me happy. It was delightfully eerie. I had no reason to mistrust it yet. I begged to go on, to which he relented, paying the ticket man. The man looked bored, standing in his crumpled red and white uniform, yet he still greeted me kindly and took me onto the ride. I spent a few seconds looking at the horses, and then I saw the most beautiful one. Ringford stood out as soon as I saw him, a gorgeous, older-looking horse, dark bay with a flowing mane and tail. Ringford looked much older than the other horses on the carousel, which confused me slightly. However, I simply couldn't resist choosing him. I told the ticket man I had chosen, and he took me over to Ringford, helping me clamber up onto him. Nobody else was interested in getting on, and so I was alone on the ride. I could see the ticket man standing alone at the booth. I could see him watching me from the side of the carousel. I waved at him, and he grinned, waving back and giving me a thumbs up. The ticket man told me to get ready, and he pushed the button. It started out relatively slowly, and honestly kind of boring. But as the music sped up, so did the ride. I waved at him again, him waving back. I got distracted by Ringford's beautiful mane, stroking it gently as the ride got progressively faster. I could almost hear him neigh underneath me. I was sure I was only imagining it, though. The ride got slightly faster. I could hear the music clearly. Faster again. I got slightly nervous, clinging on to the golden pole. Faster. I could hear other children laughing. I whipped my head around, looking around. There were 3 other children on the carousel with me. But when did they get on? I was the only person on this ride. I knew I was. So how are they here? Did they somehow jump on, despite the speed that the carousel was going? That didn't seem quite right. There was just something off. They seemed almost faded, like some of the color was removed from their clothing and bodies. I looked around, and it seemed like everything looked like this now. I couldn't see him. I couldn't even see the ticket man. Faster again, impossibly fast now. There was no way this wasn't dangerous. I was clinging on as hard as I could. Faster, faster, faster. Just as I thought I was going to fly off, hands slowly losing grip on the pole, as all I could hear was neighing and children's laughter. The ride slowed, color progressively bleeding back into it. Suddenly, I could see him again. I could see the ticket man, but I felt different. I told him I felt different once I got off the ride. He thought I meant sick, but no. I feel like I am not myself. Something had changed. I was 6 then. I am 19 now. I still do not know where I ended up, where I currently am, or who he is. I don't know what happened on that carousel, but I do know one thing. I am not the same person who got onto Ringford. Something happened on that ride, and whatever it was has changed my whole life.